she screamed before I could even step out of the car. Arrest him. He's trespassing. 3 police cruisers were already blocking my driveway, red and blue lights flashing, neighbors standing on their lawns like it was a show. And in the middle of it all, my wife's brand new Rolls Royce, the black paint still shining from the dealer polish. One officer had his hand on his belt. Another was walking around the car, tapping the hood like he owned it. Karen stood near the mailbox, arms crossed, fake confidence all over her face. "I told you," she shouted, pointing at me. "This vehicle violates HOA luxury parking codes." He was warned. Luxury parking codes. I blinked once, slowly. "This is my driveway," I said calmly. "You people always say that," she snapped. "This is a controlled community." Controlled. That word hung in the air. The officer near the hood looked at Karen. "Ma'am, you said the vehicle was abandoned?" "It is," she replied quickly. "They don't belong here. No approval from the HOA board." I looked at the badge on his chest. Real cop. City police. Not fake security. That surprised me. Before I could say anything else, Karen walked right up to the driver door and slapped a bright orange notice on the windshield. "Unauthorized vehicle. Tow immediately." I almost laughed, but then it happened. One officer stepped back to reposition his cruiser. His bumper clipped the front corner of the Rolls. A sharp crack echoed across the street. The headlight shattered. The hood dented. Silence. Even the wind stopped. My chest tightened. But I didn't move. The officer froze. It was an accident. Karen didn't miss a beat. See? Even the police know it shouldn't be here. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger. Something colder. "You just damaged private property," I said quietly. Karen smirked. "Property that doesn't belong in this neighborhood." I slowly pulled out my phone. One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, you can't record us during an active call." I raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I can." The neighbors started whispering. Karen leaned closer to me, lowering her voice. "You think that little camera will save you?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. "You have no idea what you just did." She laughed. And that was her mistake. Because what Karen didn't know, what none of them knew, the Rolls Royce wasn't just a gift. It was a celebration. My wife had signed papers that morning. Papers that change everything. The same department standing in my driveway. She now controlled it. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Instead, I turned back to the officer who hit the car. "You might want to call your supervisor," I said calmly. Karen rolled her eyes. "Good. Call more cops. Let them all see you breaking HOA law." One neighbor muttered, "HOA law isn't criminal." Karen shot him a look and he went quiet. The officer radioed something in. I stepped slightly to the side, making sure the cracked headlight was clearly visible on camera. "Sir," the officer said, trying to regain control, "this is about community compliance." "No," I replied softly. "This is about damage." Karen folded her arms tighter. "You people always threaten lawsuits. You people." There it was. She had been waiting to say that. I smiled slightly. "No, I don't threaten." She leaned in. "Then what do you do?" I locked my phone screen. "I wait." That line made her frown. The officer who hit the car looked uneasy now. He kept glancing at Karen like he was starting to question who called who. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "does your HOA have authority over public law enforcement?" Karen stiffened. "I'm the acting president." Acting. Interesting choice of word. "And yes," she added quickly, "we have an agreement." I almost asked to see it. But I didn't, because at that exact moment, my phone vibrated. One message. From my wife. Just 3 words. "They did what?" I looked at the shattered headlight. Then at Karen's proud face. Then at the patrol cars parked like they were making a statement. I typed back only one sentence. "Come home." Karen tilted her head. "Calling back up." I met her eyes. "No," I said calmly. "Calling the boss." She laughed again. The officers didn't. Somewhere in the distance, another siren started approaching. And this time, it wasn't for me. The second siren got louder. Then 2 more joined it. The officers in my driveway looked at each other. "That's not ours," one muttered. Karen's smile started to fade. "What is this?" I didn't request more units. I stayed quiet. The new convoy turned onto our street fast. Not neighborhood patrol speed, official speed. An unmarked black SUV, 2 command vehicles, and a marked cruiser with a flag on the front bumper, the kind you only see during ceremonies or when someone important is inside. The first cruiser stopped in the middle of the road. Doors opened at the same time. My wife stepped out, still in her navy suit from this morning, badge clipped to her belt, new stars shining on her collar. The entire street went silent. One of the officers in my driveway whispered, "Oh." Karen blinked. "Who is that?" I didn't answer. My wife walked straight toward the damaged Rolls, her heels clicking on the pavement, slow, controlled. She didn't look at me first. She looked at the broken headlight, then at the dent in the hood, then at the cruiser bumper parked inches away. Finally, she looked up. "Who was driving that unit?" she asked calmly. "The officer who hit the car swallowed." "Ma'am, it was an accident during positioning." She nodded once. "Your name?" He said it. Her deputy standing behind her wrote it down without a word. Karen stepped forward, trying to recover her energy. "Ma'am, thank you for coming." These residents had been violating HOA restrictions and my wife raised one finger without even looking at her. Karen stopped talking. That one small gesture did more than shouting ever could. My wife turned slowly toward her. "And you are?" "I'm Karen Mitchell, acting HOA president. We have authority in this neighborhood and..." "Authority over what?" My wife asked softly. "Over compliance. Vehicles must be approved." "That car belongs to me." The words landed heavy. Karen blinked again. "Excuse me?" "That vehicle," my wife repeated, "is registered in my name." A ripple moved through the neighbors. Karen's face tightened. "Well, that doesn't matter. There are community standards." My wife took one step closer. "Community standards do not override city law, and they do not authorize officers to respond under false claims." One of the original officers cleared his throat. "Ma'am, dispatch logged it as an abandoned suspicious vehicle." My wife's eyes shifted to Karen. "Did you report it abandoned?" Karen hesitated. "Just for a second. It looked abandoned," she said quickly. "It doesn't fit the neighborhood." There it was again. "Doesn't fit." My wife folded her hands calmly behind her back. "You stated to 911 that the vehicle had no owner present, that it was possibly involved in criminal activity." Karen's mouth opened, then closed. Neighbors started whispering louder now. "That's not what I meant, but that is what you said." My wife replied. She turned to the officer who damaged the car. "Photograph everything. Body cam footage preserved. This becomes an internal review." His face went pale. "Ma'am, and move your unit, now." He rushed to reposition the cruiser, this time extra careful. Karen's voice rose. "This is ridiculous. You can't intimidate residents like this." "I have rights." My wife looked at her fully now. "Yes," she said calmly, "you do." Pause. "And so do we." Karen tried one more angle. "Your husband was aggressive." I almost laughed. My wife tilted her head slightly. "Aggressive how?" "He was recording officers. That is legal." "He refused to move the vehicle. It is parked in our driveway." Karen's voice cracked. "This is abuse of power." My wife stepped even closer now. Close enough that Karen had to lean back slightly. "No," she said softly. "Abuse of power is filing a false police report to control your neighbors." That hit hard. Karen's face lost color. One of the deputies walked up quietly and handed my wife a small tablet. She glanced at the screen for 3 seconds. Then she looked back at Karen. "You've made for prior calls this year regarding suspicious residents on this street," she said calmly. "All unfounded." Karen's confidence started slipping. "I was protecting property values." My wife nodded once. "From what?" Silence. The question hung heavy. "From what?" Karen didn't answer. "Because there was no safe answer." My wife turned slightly toward me for the first time since she arrived. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just a broken headlight." She looked back at the damage. "It won't be the only thing broken if procedure wasn't followed." That lie made two officers stiffen. Karen tried one last move. "The HOA contract clearly states we can enforce parking through fines." My wife cutting. "Not through police dispatch manipulation." The word manipulation landed like a hammer. One of the senior supervisors who arrived with her stepped forward. "Ma'am, should we detain her?" Karen gasped. "Detain me? For what?" My wife didn't answer right away. She looked at the neighbors watching. She looked at the body cams recording. She looked at the shattered glass on the ground. Then she said quietly, "For now, no." Karen exhaled in relief, but my wife wasn't done. "However," she continued, "a formal investigation will begin today. False reporting Misuse of emergency services. Potential civil liability for property damage. Karen's relief vanished. You can't do this over a car. My wife met her eyes one last time. This was never about the car. The street went silent again. And that's when Karen made the worst mistake of the day. She pointed at me and said, "You planned this." Every officer turned toward her slowly. "Planned this." My wife's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped half a tone. "Be very careful with your next sentence." Karen swallowed, but instead of stopping, she doubled down. And that's when everything truly shifted. Karen's finger was still pointed at me. "You staged this," she said louder now, like volume could make it true. "You bought that car just to provoke the neighborhood." A few neighbors gasped. Someone whispered, "She's losing it." My wife didn't blink. "Provoked," she repeated calmly, "by parking in my own driveway." Karen's jaw tightened. "You people move in, ignore the rules, then cry discrimination when someone enforces them." There it was again. That tone, that hidden line, she kept trying to cross without fully saying it. My wife stepped slightly to the side so her deputies could see. Karen clearly on their body cams. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "are you claiming this was an emergency?" Karen hesitated. "It was a community threat." "A Rolls Royce is a threat? It sends a message." "What message?" Karen didn't answer that, because there was no safe answer. The senior supervisor cleared his throat. "Dispatch recording confirms. The caller said the vehicle might be tied to drug activity and possible gang presence." The street went dead quiet. My wife's eyes didn't move from Karen's face. "You said that?" Karen's confidence cracked. "I was just repeating what neighbors told me." All heads turned. Neighbors immediately shook their heads. "No, we didn't. Don't drag us into this." Karen looked around like the ground had shifted under her feet. My wife nodded slowly. "So you escalated a parked vehicle into a criminal suspicion without evidence. It didn't belong here." Karen snapped. "According to who?" "The HOA. Show me the clause." Karen opened her mouth, then froze. She didn't have it. She had nose. She had attitude. She didn't have authority. My wife turned to one of her deputies. "Pull HOA filings for this subdivision." The deputy tapped on the tablet. "Ma'am." "Interesting. What?" "The HOA charter expired 6 months ago. No renewal on record with the county." A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Karen's face drained of color. "That's not possible." "It is," the deputy replied. "Board status. Inactive." Inactive. That word hit harder than any siren. My wife looked back at Karen. "You said you're the acting president." "I am. Of an entity that legally doesn't exist." Karen stepped back like she'd been pushed. "That's technical," she said weakly. "We're in transition." "Transition does not give you enforcement rights," my wife replied. One of the original officers shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we responded based on the call details, and you will file supplemental reports correcting them," my wife said calmly. Then she looked at the cracked headlight again. "Damage assessment will be documented. The city will handle internal review." The officer who hit the car looked like he wanted the ground to open. Karen suddenly found her voice again. "This is harassment. You're using your position to scare me." My wife tilted her head slightly. "You called armed officers to a fall scene." "That's not false." "Was the vehicle abandoned?" "No." "Was it blocking public access?" "No." "Was there criminal activity?" Karen's lips trembled. "I believed there could be." "Based on what?" Silence. My wife stepped closer. "Based on what, Ms. Mitchell?" Karen's eyes flit toward me, then back. "Based on patterns." That word made several neighbors murmur angrily. My wife's tone dropped colder. "Be specific." Karen swallowed. "New residence, expensive car, no HOA approval." "That is not a crime." Karen's breathing became uneven. "You're twisting this." "No," my wife said quietly. "You are." One of the deputies stepped forward and spoke low into my wife's ear. She nodded once. Then she addressed the officers who had first arrived. "Until further notice, no HOA-related dispatch from this address will be treated as priority without supervisor verification." Karen's eyes widened. "You can't block my calls." "No," my wife corrected calmly. "We are ensuring emergency lines are not abused." That line hit hard. A neighbor actually clapped once before realizing what they'd done. Karen spun toward the crowd. "You're all going to regret this. Property values will drop." An older man from across the street shook his head. "Property values drop when cops smash cars on false calls." Karen looked like she'd been slapped. She tried one last desperate move. "You think this ends here?" she said, pointing at my wife now. "I have lawyers. I have connections at City Hall." My wife didn't react. "Could," she said simply. "Use them." Karen faltered. "What?" "You will need them." For the first time since this started, fear showed clearly on Karen's face. My wife gestured to her supervisor. "Document her statement regarding intentional escalation." Karen's voice cracked. "Intentional? I was protecting the community." "From what?" my wife asked again. That question wouldn't leave. Karen had no answer, because the truth would destroy her. One of the deputies approached with a printed sheet from the mobile unit printer. "Ma'am, this confirms HOA dissolution notice mailed to the registered president." "That's her." He handed it to my wife. She glanced at the date. 3 months ago. She looked up slowly. "You were notified your authority expired." Karen's hands shook. "It was paperwork delay. You continued issuing violation notices." "It was temporary." "You threatened residents with eviction." "It was symbolic." The neighbors gasped. "Symbolic?" My wife's voice stayed calm, but the air around her felt different now. "You do not get to symbolically threaten people's homes." Karen's eyes darted around like she was searching for support. There was none. One of the original officers spoke carefully. "Ma'am, if the HOA is inactive, then this entire call lacks jurisdiction basis." "Yes," my wife replied. The weight of that word settled on everyone. Karen stepped forward again, but her confidence was gone. "So what? You're going to arrest me for making a phone call?" My wife held her gaze. "For knowingly making a false emergency report. That is a chargeable offense." Karen's breath caught. "I didn't lie." "You said abandoned." "I thought it was." "You said criminal suspicion." "I was cautious." "You said gang-related activity." Karen froze, because she had forgotten that part. The supervisor spoke quietly. "Dispatch audio is clear." Karen's lips parted but no sound came out. My wife turned slightly, giving her a small opening. "This is the moment," she said softly. "You can correct your statement." The entire street watched. Karen's pride battled her fear. "I may have overstated," she muttered. Louder. My wife said, "I may have overstated the situation." There it was. The admission. One of the deputies began writing quickly. Karen realized too late what she'd just done. "You tricked me," she whispered. "No," my wife said calmly. "You exposed yourself." The officer who damaged the car approached nervously. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize for the vehicle impact." My wife nodded once. "Apology noted. Internal affairs will follow up." Karen shook her head wildly. "This is insane." "Over a car." My wife looked at her steadily. "You called armed officers into a peaceful driveway. That is not over a car." A small boy from 2 houses down stepped closer to his mother. "Mom, are they going to jail?" The mother whispered. "I don't know." Karen heard that. Her face changed again. Fear became anger. "You think you've won?" she hissed at me. I finally spoke again. "I never fought." That line made her flinch. Because it was true. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't argued. I waited. Just like I said. Sirens in the distance faded as the command vehicles idled quietly. My wife stepped back slightly, giving Karen physical space, but not relief. "Here's what happens next," she said calmly. "A formal report will be filed. Evidence reviewed. Charges considered by the district attorney." Karen's knees almost buckled. "Charges?" she whispered. "Yes. For false reporting, potential defamation, and misuse of emergency services." Neighbors began recording openly now. Karen looked around desperately. "You're all against me." An older woman spoke gently. "No. Karen, you did this." That hurt more than anything. Karen's shoulders sagged. For the first time. She looked small, but even then, she tried one final twist. "You only care because it's your car," she said weakly. My wife shook her head. "No," she replied. "I care because if you can weaponize the police against one neighbor, you can do it to any of them." That line settled deep. Several neighbors nodded. Karen opened her mouth again, then stopped. There was nothing left. My wife signaled to her team. "Units clear the scene." Supervisor remained for statements. The cruisers began moving one by one. The flashing lights shut off. Silence returned to the street. But this silence felt different. Karen stood alone near the mailbox she once guarded like a throne. My wife turned to me finally. "You sure you're okay?" I smiled faintly. "I told you. Just a headlight." She looked at the damage again, then at the neighbors. "They won't try that again," she said quietly. I believed her. Karen suddenly spoke in a small voice. "This isn't over." My wife looked back at her one last time. "No," she agreed softly. "It's just beginning." And the way she said it made everyone understand. This wasn't about a car. It was about power. And Karen had just lost hers. Karen didn't move from the mailbox for a long time. The cruisers were gone. The command SUV pulled away last. Neighbors slowly drifted back toward their houses, but no one closed their blinds. They were watching. Waiting. My wife stood beside the Rolls, running her fingers lightly over the cracked headlight. The dent in the hood caught the afternoon sun in a way that made it impossible to ignore. "It's fixable," I said. She nodded. "That's not what bothers me." I knew it wasn't the damage. It was the intention behind it. Karen finally turned toward us. Her voice wasn't loud anymore. It wasn't sharp. It was thin. "You embarrassed me." My wife looked at her calmly. "You embarrassed yourself." Karen's jaw tightened. "You used your badge." "No," my wife replied. "You tried to use mine." That line hit harder than anything before it. Karen opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. She looked down at the orange HOA notice still stuck to the windshield. Slowly, she reached up and peeled it off. The paper crumpled in her hand. "It was about standards," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "It was about control." She looked at me like she wanted to deny it, but she didn't, because deep down, she knew. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then a white sedan turned onto the street. Not a police car. Not city, county seal on the door. Two officials stepped out with folders in their hands. Karen froze. One of them called out politely, "Karen Mitchell?" Her shoulders stiffened. "Yes, we're here regarding multiple HOA complaints filed with the county registrar. We need to discuss unauthorized enforcement actions." The timing was almost unreal. She looked at my wife. "You called them?" My wife shook her head. "No." And that was the truth. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. The county official continued. "There are also reports of collected fines after the HOA charter expiration." Karen's face drained completely. Collected fines. Neighbors began stepping back out onto their lawns. An older man from across the street raised his voice. "You fined me for my fence in July." A woman near the corner added, "You threatened to lien my house." Karen looked around like she was drowning. "I was keeping order," she cried. The county official opened his folder. "Order requires legal authority." He handed her a document. "Effective immediately, you are to cease all HOA representation. Failure to comply may result in fraud charges." Fraud? The word echoed. Karen's hands trembled as she held the paper. My wife didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply stood there. Karen's voice cracked. "They'll turn on you too." My wife met her eyes one last time. "Not if I serve them." Silence. Heavy. Real. The county officials asked Karen to step aside to discuss financial records. She walked with them slowly. No longer leading anything. No longer commanding. Just walking. Neighbors began talking openly now. "She pushed too far. She called cops over a car." I knew something was off. One by one, people approached us. Not dramatically, just quietly. "Glad you're here. Sorry that happened." Didn't know she called it gang-related. My wife nodded politely to each of them. Then she turned to me. "You okay with this attention?" I smiled slightly. "Better than red and blue lights." She let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. The street felt different now, lighter. The Rolls still had a cracked headlight, but somehow, it didn't look damaged anymore. It looked like proof. Proof that power without authority collapses. Karen's raised voice drifted faintly from down the sidewalk, arguing with the county officials. Then it stopped. Just stopped. About 20 minutes later, she walked back toward her house alone. No confidence, no audience. She didn't look at anyone. Before going inside, she paused, turned toward us. For a second, I thought she might say something else. But she didn't. She just shook her head slightly and closed her door. The sound echoed more than any siren had. My wife looked at the dent one last time. "I'll have it fixed tomorrow," she said. I nodded. She glanced at me carefully. "You really didn't panic back there." I shrugged. "You told me this morning your job changed." She smiled faintly. "You trusted me." "I always do." She looked back down the street where the patrol cars had been. "I didn't fight for 20 years in uniform," she said quietly, "to let someone weaponize fear in their own neighborhood." That was the line. The one neighbors would repeat later. The one that would travel. Because it wasn't about a Rolls Royce. It wasn't about flashing lights. It was about a simple thing Americans understand deeply. You don't get to push someone off their own land. A week later, the headlight was repaired. The dent gone. But something else had changed too. The HOA sign at the neighborhood entrance removed. County notice posted instead. Board under investigation. Neighbors started organizing properly. Transparent elections. Clear rules. No secret fines. No fake authority. And charges were filed. Not dramatic. Not handcuffs on the lawn. Just paperwork. Court dates. Consequences. The kind that last longer than sirens. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the houses, I stood in the driveway again. The rolls shined perfectly. Kids rode bikes across the street. Neighbors waved instead of whispering. My wife stepped out beside me. Quiet, peaceful, worth it? She asked. I looked around at the calm street, at the open blinds, at the absence of flashing lights. Yeah. I said softly, worth it, because in the end, Karen thought she could control the neighborhood with fear. She didn't know she was standing in front of the one person who now controlled the badge she tried to use. Because in the end, Karen thought she could control the neighborhood with fear. She didn't know she was standing in front of the one person who now controlled the badge she tried to use. And she definitely didn't know. Some people don't need to shout to win. They just wait.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.